Hi, Councillor Nicol.
Hello.
Mr. Mayor, you look very shadowy.
I can't.
I steer.
Councillor Knack.
Oh, that's a little better. I mean, you can govern from the dark if you want to just.
Remember we talked about this, fear leads to anger, anger leads to hatred, and hatred leads to being strongly backlit. There's my best Palpatine.
That's great. I like it.
We got Disney Plus now, so the kids lobbied hard. It was either that or a dog, so Disney Plus it is.
The Mandalorian is great.
Yes. Okay, can you hear me a little better now? I should be on the mic now.
This is the way.
Okay. Oh.
Yeah, so I'm calling about my insurance.
Okay, so first to the clerks, are we do we need a few more minutes? Or we
We're streaming live and we have all members of Audit Committee online.
superb. Okay. Well, I will start with I'll call this Audit Committee meeting to order and note that we are trying something a little bit different to demonstrate that we're able to convene meetings online, both virtually for the benefit of participating committee and council members, as well as for the public to follow along on a streaming mechanism. So bear with us if there are any technical challenges, but thanks to clerks and IT for facilitating this and for the flexibility of members of the committee in particular. So I will, before I do the roll call though, I will welcome to his first meeting in his new capacity as a public member of the Audit Committee, Chris Burrows, who's with us here in person, in the same room, that is to say, as I am, along with a few other people, and there are less than 15 people in this room, just to double check. And so everybody else who is a member of the committee is joining us virtually, but Chris, if you can just say hello, so you come up and wave to the audience.
Hello, good afternoon. Glad to join.
Thanks. Congratulations and welcome. So now I'll do a roll call. Obviously, Mr. Burrows is here. Next, I will call on Councillor Knack as Vice Chair.
Good afternoon. I'm here.
Excellent. Councillor Cartmel.
Present. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Councillor Essinger.
Here.
Welcome. Councillor Nicol.
Present.
Thank you. And Mr. Edmondson.
Yes, I'm here.
Super. Thank you. So everyone is present and accounted for. I now need a motion to adopt this fairly straightforward agenda to deal with the consolidated financial statements and the audit findings reports, as well as the external audit service request for proposal technical evaluation. So
moved.
Thank you, Councillor Essinger. Are there any questions on the agenda? Not seeing any. Do you want us to just vote by By verbal? Okay, we can do that. We won't use the vote bot. So all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Yes.
Okay, not hearing any. That's unanimous. The minutes, Councillor Knack.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will move the adoption of the minutes from the January 30th, 2020 Audit Committee and the May 6th, 2020 Audit Selection Committee meetings.
Super. Any questions or concerns, errors or omissions with the minutes? Not seeing any, then I will simply call the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Not hearing any, so those pass unanimously. Already welcome Mr. Burrows under at the top, so we'll carry on past protocol items and into selection of items for debate. I think we should probably hear all of these, so I'll select them. Whether we have deep questions on them or not remains to be seen. Are there any councillor inquiries? Not hearing any. We will move into item 6.1, the audit findings report. So we have that before us. Are there questions on it? Councillor Knack?
Yes, I was trying to recall. There was a question that I thought last time, I believe it was Ms. Pearson had asked it, and it was related to if throughout the audit, if she had, or if the auditors had any trouble accessing any information from city staff throughout the duration of that work. And I remembered that one from before, and so I just thought I'd ask it again now if we have someone on. Do we have anyone from?
The question's for KPMG.
Yes, sorry. Yeah.
They are on the line.
May need to unmute yourselves.
Hello, it's Robert Borelli here. And with respect to your question, we had full and open access to all the information we required and had the full cooperation of administration throughout the audit.
Thank you. That was my question, Mr. Mayor.
Great. Good due diligence question. Are there any other questions?
Mr. Mayor, if I might,
Mr. Edmondson, go ahead.
to KPMG, my question is, throughout the course of your audit or any of your other discussions with management, has anything come to your attention that is not covered in your audit findings report that should be brought to the attention of this committee?
Thank you for the question. All the information required to do our audit or conduct our audit was available to us, and all the information that we went through in discussing key audit and accounting issues, we didn't have anything come out of it that required audit committee attention. If that does occur now or sometime in the future, that's something we are required to report and would do so.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Councillor Essinger, go ahead.
The question is for KPMG. It's about the investments, and I know you do evaluation of investments, and it was identified a possible risk, and I just wanted to ask a question on your view of what was happening there.
Yeah, the city has a large portfolio of investments that comprise of high quality government bonds and high quality corporate securities. And at the balance sheet date, which was December 31st, 2019, the market value of those investments were in excess of their cost. As a result, there was no impairment required. That being the case, after year end, as a result of COVID and the implications of the market volatility, we did look at market activity after year end. And at this point, we didn't identify any impairment that required disclosure in the financial statements. That being said, as this ongoing economic uncertainty continues, it's something that I know administration will continue to monitor on a regular basis.
Thank you for that answer. That's all my questions.
Any other questions for Mr. Borelli? Seeing none, would someone move receipt of information of the 2019 audit findings report from KPMG?
So moved.
Thank you, Councillor Cartmel. Any debate on this? Well, with thanks, Mr. Borelli, presumably, for your work and your findings, we'll ask for the vote verbally. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That carries. The consolidated financial statements for the city for 2019. There is a presentation available. Would anyone like the presentation?
Yeah, I think we should. I don't necessarily have questions, but I wouldn't mind the presentation, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, then please proceed with the presentation.
The report before you today addresses our formal legislated 2019 financial reporting. It includes the draft consolidated financial statements for the City of Edmonton, along with management's responsibility for financial reporting and the independent auditor's report. Also included in this report is the draft financial statement discussion and analysis, which provides additional background to support an understanding of the consolidated financial results. I will ask that Cody Tomnick take you through a brief presentation with respect to the financial statements.
Thanks, Stacey. The consolidated financial statements before you have been prepared by management in accordance with Canadian Public Sector Accounting Standards as required by the Municipal Government Act. The financial statements reflect city departments as well as a number of organizations and enterprises accountable for the administration of their financial affairs and resources to the City of Edmonton. The city continues to maintain a resilient financial position. The tables in this slide summarize the key financial information from the consolidated financial statements. The city has a positive net financial asset position of $2.5 billion, which can be primarily attributed to its investment portfolio, investment in EPCOR, and cash equivalents, partially offset by long-term debt. Financial assets such as cash and cash equivalents, receivables, and investments are generally available to cover liabilities and to provide services. The city manages its cash position to ensure it has adequate cash and investment balances to meet financial obligations and continues to monitor working capital in a prudent manner. The most significant changes in the city's financial position include a decrease in cash and cash equivalents of $273.7 million due to timing differences between expenditures and funding sources, and it's consistent with the increase in both investments and trade and other receivables. Receivables have increased by $186 million from the prior year. Trade and other local improvement receivable and taxes receivable increased by $11.3 million due to normal operating fluctuations. Government grant receivables increased by a net $174.7 million compared to the prior year as a result of timing differences between expenditures related to the Valley Line LRT Southeast project and reimbursement of those expenditures through grant funding, as well as capital project expenditures approved for the Municipal Sustainability Initiative grant, for which the grant funds are yet to be received. An increase of $64.9 million in investments brought the total book value of investments to $1.9 billion. The increase was mainly due to the recovery of equity markets around the world following the decline in market performance at the end of 2018. Supportive monetary policy, easing trade tensions, and stabilizing global growth continued to strengthen in capital markets during the year. The outbreak of The novel coronavirus in early 2020 has created market volatility, which has impacted the value of the city's investments and could result in reductions in investment income or impairment of investments in the current year. However, the extent and magnitude of the financial impact cannot be estimated at this time. An increase of 92.9 million in the city's investment in EPCOR resulted from EPCOR's net income for the year, partially offset by other comprehensive losses, a dividend paid to the city, and other equity adjustments. An increase in accounts payable and accrued liabilities of 85.5 million was due to trade and other payables increasing by 96.3 million due to timing differences in payment of outstanding invoices and an overall increase in capital expenditures compared to the prior year. A decrease in deferred revenue within liabilities of 142.9 million is a result of the reduction in MSI grant proceeds received during the year and the use of the Provincial Climate Leadership Plan grant to fund the Valley Line LRT expenditures. An increase in long-term debt of 156.6 million is a result of new debt borrowing to finance major capital projects, including the Blatchford District Energy System, the revitalization of the Stanley Milner Library, construction of the Kathleen Andrews Transit Garage, and design and land acquisition related to Yellowhead Trail Freeway conversion. The largest component of non-financial assets is tangible capital assets, which increased by 678 million over the prior year as a result of acquisitions of 1.3 billion and contributed tangible capital assets of 146.9 million. And this increase was partially offset by annual amortization of 558.5 million and disposals and transfers of assets with net book value of 107.3 million and impairment of 62.3 million. Information on the composition of the financial assets, liabilities, and non-financial assets, along with explanations on year-over-year changes available in the financial statements. The city's accumulated surplus has been built up since inception and is comprised of the city's assets less its liabilities over time. Significant components of the accumulated surplus are identified on the slide, and a more detailed listing is shown in note 16 of the financial statements. The city ended the year with 14.9 billion in accumulated surplus, an increase of 4.4% over the previous year. Included in accumulated surplus is the 20.1 million annual surplus for tax-supported operations, and other significant components include equity in EPCOR of 3.8 billion and the EdTel Endowment Fund of 823.4 million. Land enterprise unrestricted retained earnings is 107.7 million, and waste services utility unrestricted retained earnings accounts for 9.6 million of accumulated surplus. In the first year of operations, the Blatchford Renewable Energy Utility ended the year with an accumulated deficit of 1.9 million. And other of 45.8 million includes the accumulated surplus of the city's pension and benefit plans and other external entities such as EDC and the Edmonton Public Library. A total of 758.2 million has been earmarked within reserves to address financial stabilization and other specific needs in the future. Approximately 9.3 billion of the accumulated surplus is equity in tangible capital assets, which represents the city's investments in tangible capital assets, net of any related debt outstanding. And advances for construction total 71.2 million, which represents net funding available for future capital. The statement of operations and accumulated surplus outlines operating revenues, operating expenses, and capital revenues. The operating budget information is consistent with amounts approved by City Council in April 2019 with the passing of the 2019 property tax and supplementary property tax bylaw. The statement reflects a shortfall of revenues over expenses of 69.7 million before capital revenues of 749.8 million. Operating revenue increased by 69.7 million from the prior year due to an increase of 79.8 million in taxation revenue from a combined rate increase and growth, and an increase of 35.7 million in investment earnings, partially offset by a decrease of 64.1 million in EPCOR earnings. There was a net increase of 18.3 million from various other revenue sources. Operating revenues were lower than budgeted by 90 million or 2.8% of the revenue budget due to lower than budgeted net income for EPCOR and lower than budgeted user fees and sales. Operating expenses increased by 160.3 million over the prior year. Increases in salaries and benefits, consistent with contractual rate adjustments, contracted and general services, grants and other, and interest and bank charges, disposals and impairments of tangible capital assets and amortization were partially offset by net decrease in materials, goods, and utilities. Operating expenses of 3.2 billion were lower than budget by 37.9 million, or 1.2% of the consolidated expense budget. Capital revenues decreased from the prior year by 192 million, which was primarily due to a decrease in government transfers by 128.1 million and a decrease in contributed tangible capital assets by 57 million. Capital revenues of 749.8 million were 29.2 million lower than budget during the year due to the 66.8 million lower than anticipated capital developer and customer contributions and local improvements. EPCOR equity adjustments were greater in 2018, mainly due to prior year adjustments for the drainage utility contributed capital transfer to EPCOR. And details on year-over-year variances and variances from budget are discussed in the financial statement discussion and analysis included as attachment 2 to this report. The preparation of financial statements includes amounts based on the best estimates and professional judgment of management. A summary of instances where management has made significant assumptions and estimates is provided in attachments 3 to this report and also discussed in note 1 to the financial statements. Effective January 1st, 2019, the city implemented a new accounting standard for restructuring transactions, which was required to be implemented for government organizations with fiscal years beginning on or after April 1st, 2018. The adoption of these standards was applied on a prospective basis and is reflected in the financial statements in note 22. And the newly implemented standard is further discussed in note 1 of the financial statements. There are several new standards that will be effective in the upcoming years, and management continues to assess these standards to determine their impact on the financial statements. The future accounting standards are further discussed in note 1 of the financial statements. On January 30th, 2020, the outbreak of the COVID-19 was declared a public health emergency. The outbreak may have significant impact on the city's revenues, expenses, potential impairment, investment impairment, and delays in completion of capital projects in the future, the overall extent and magnitude of which has not yet been determined. Additional details with respect to the city's response to the pandemic and its potential implications for the city's financial condition are included in note 28 to the financial statements. And as those events arose subsequent to the financial statement date of December 31st, 2019, no adjustments have been recorded in the financial statements. And subject to recommendation of the Audit Committee, the 2019 City of Edmonton audited consolidated financial statements are scheduled to be presented to City Council for approval at the meeting on June 8th. The report to Council will include the financial statement discussion and analysis, which will also be included in the City's financial annual report. The annual report will be available on the City's website shortly after approval and in hard copy shortly thereafter. In order to assist municipalities in complying with legislative requirements during the outbreak, the deadline for submission of audited consolidated financial statements in the Municipal Government Act has been extended to October 1st. The Provincial Financial Information Return reporting template has been audited and will be filed with the Minister after the approval of the financial statements. Summarized financial reporting to citizens will be provided with a reference to the full financial annual report later this year. For the 26th consecutive year, the city was recognized with the Government Finance Officers Association Award for the financial reporting for the 2018 financial annual report, demonstrating the city's ongoing commitment to quality in financial reporting. The 2019 annual report will be submitted for consideration for this award again. And KPMG will provide an annual audit management letter to Audit Committee later in the year, outlining any observations and recommendations with respect to findings as a result of the 2019 financial statement audit. Management will also provide a report to Audit Committee with responses to the auditor's observations and recommendations. This concludes our presentation, and we'd be pleased to respond to any questions you may have.
Well, thank you very much for that comprehensive overview of the material and the work behind it. Questions? Maybe just one around the reporting to the government of Alberta in their template. In the presentation you just gave us, the reserves number is rolled up to 700 million, but there's a variety of different reserves that make up that number, most of which are committed versus uncommitted. Does the provincial template make a distinction, and does our reporting make a distinction between committed reserves and uncommitted reserves?
Sorry, so the provincial template doesn't make any distinction between committed and uncommitted reserves. Our financial statement note does just, we list all the reserves in the financial statement note, but there's no distinction between committed and uncommitted.
Yeah, I was trying to find the note with the breakdown.
Note 15.
Yes.
Yes. Yes, and it seems to me that, and perhaps it's feedback because, and I ask partly in the context of COVID, because one of the suggestions from the government of Alberta has been, well, just deplete your reserves. And certainly the financial stabilization reserve is there for emergencies and is part of the city's financial strategy, but that is 100, in the 100 million and change range, as opposed to the 700 million and change range. Reporting that makes it look like we have 700 million in uncommitted would reinforce the provincial government's perception. 740 million would reinforce the perception that there is substantial reserves of uncommitted dollars to draw down. So, I mean, the note covers that as we would understand it. But for example, local improvement too, those are statutorily committed dollars by the province's own legislation that are set aside. And so, so it may be feedback for us to provide separately or subsequently to the government of Alberta about its reporting templates. Because I think the FSR is clearly the financial stabilization reserve or the discretionary reserve. The true emergency rainy day fund is absolutely should be reported, but it distinct from the aggregate reserves. So that may be we may wish to transmit something to the government of Alberta in that regard subsequent to this. Though note 15 does break it out, which is helpful. But it, again, I don't know if they take this or if they take the just the roll up. So, Ms. Pearson. If you speak loudly, my mic might pick it up from 6 feet away.
Star 6. Doesn't work. Nothing. I'm apologizing. Nothing's working. Oh, maybe what you could repeat for me my answer as well.
Sure.
So we have had ongoing discussions with Treasury Board about exactly that point. So we take your point and we could formalize with a letter what the difference is as well.
Okay, so
we have been in ongoing discussions that a lot of our funds are committed, and some basically by the MJ itself.
So ongoing discussions with Treasury Board about precisely that point will follow up with further correspondence and active point of discussion. So that's very reassuring. Thank you very much. Any other questions about the consolidated financial statements?
I have one.
Go ahead.
It's on note 3 under the receivables. And I noticed that over year, they're up about a third. And I just don't know if that's unusual or if we're facing a challenge in a particular area. It appears to be mostly government grants, but I'm not sure.
So yeah,
I'll try. So the major increase is in government grants, and it's not unusual for us to see a fluctuation in accounts receivable year over year. Part of the work we do at each year end is look at the amount that's sitting in receivables and whether everything is collectible. So we do an analysis on whether there is any potential impairment issues there.
So we don't see any impairment issues at this point, I take it.
Correct.
All right, thank you. That's all my questions.
Any other questions? Would someone be prepared to move a recommendation to council that the consolidated financial statements be approved?
So moved.
Thank you, Councillor Essinger. Any debate? Congratulations on another, 26 years or 28? Many years of recognition for this and our budget work. So well done, folks. Anything further? Not seeing any. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Not seeing any, then the statements are so recommended to council. So thank you very much. We now need to go in private to deal with item 8.1, subject to section 16, disclosure harmful to business interests of a third party, 24, advice from officials, and 25, disclosure harmful to economic and other interests of a public body. Need a motion to do that?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Edmund. Councillor Carmel?
Yes, Councillor Carmel, that was me.
Yes. All right. All those in favor of going in private to deal with that report, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Not seeing any, then we'll just give the clerks a moment to make whatever adjustments they need to make. great irony of opening the door in a room that is, or into a building that is locked down, but technically the door is open again. So a door opens, a window closes. Are we back online? Okay, just a little bit of a delay in the stream here. Bear with us. Okay, we're back online. So can I get a motion to adopt the recommendation in 8.1?
So moved.
Thank you, Councillor Knack. I'm just pulling up the exact wording of it. So that would be that the recommendations be in attachment 1 be approved, and that will allow the next steps to proceed, subject to it remaining in private, again, subject to the aforementioned section 16, 24, and 25 of FOIP. So is there any debate? Not seeing any. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Not hearing any. That carries unanimously. Are there any notices of motion today? Not seeing any. Then this first virtual and ex-City Hall, extra City Hall Audit Committee is adjourned. Thank you very much. Till next time. Except if you're a councillor, in which case stand by. We'll go back over to City Hall and start the council meeting again.